We're joined today, folks, by Adem Ilhan, the composer for the Ballad of Wallis Island. Adem, thanks very much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome, very welcome. We've had a few technical difficulties, so this is actually the third time we've said hello. So you'll see if there's an extra smile on our faces, folks, that's why. I suppose the first question then, Adem, talk to us about how you first got involved with the project.
I've done a number of projects with Baby Cow, who are the production company behind the film. And I think as they got into the edit of the film, they realised they needed a composer like me on board. I think when they started, there was definitely an idea that the songs and the music would be a central part of the film. But I don't think anyone knew what they needed from a score until they started putting the film together. And so they gave me a bell.
The movie's obviously very focused on music. It's about a band, it's about a duo, it's about how music is part of everyone's life and the good parts and the bad parts. How did you go about blending the score element and the songs element?
Well, I think firstly, I came on board looking at the songs, and in the background in the film, the music of the band is constantly being played in the background, much to their annoyance. And so I wanted first and foremost to make those songs. And I used to make music in the early 2000s, used to put records out, and it was a very sort of alt-folky type thing. So I dug out all my old gear and all my old sort of nous and thinking, and got the guitar and voice performances and stuck them through that. And I made a record, the album that they're playing in the background. And I thought, once I'd made that, I was looking at it, I really loved some of the sounds that I'd made in there. So what I did for the score, I thought about looking at it from a slightly different angle. And we're lucky enough to see sort of music being made, the process of music, and it's someone with a guitar and someone singing. And I thought, what if we took that out of the album music and looked at what the rest of the music was? So I did that. I took the guitar and the voice out of the album production, and I looked at all the sounds I'd been using and all the production ideas. And I thought, I really liked a lot of those and the way they interacted. And so I started to extrapolate from those and use elements and bits and bobs from that bed sonically to start to construct the score. And so underneath all that, when you get the score, and then you get his performances of guitar and voice, when you put them together, it kind of makes the whole. And that's kind of the thinking that I approached the score with, and then followed that path to see where it went.
So you said the songs were already written before you came on board. Was there any collaboration, any back and forth between yourself and Tom in terms of the work you were going to be doing?
Absolutely. There was... Tom's got loads of great ideas, and obviously these are his songs, and he co-wrote the film, so he had a unique and brilliant view of what this needed to be. And so I was coming into it cold, but any questions I had, he could answer clearly. It was like, well, no, I need it like this because of that. But equally, it was useful for me coming in cold because, like, well, actually, from an outsider's perspective, it looks a bit like this, and so we could have a little dialogue about what that meant. With regards to the album, we had the chords, we had the words, we had the guitar part, and we had the harmonies, and we just built around those as a central part. In the score, it kind of became a different thing. That was much more, that was a separate discussion. But making the record, very much collaborative.
And speaking of collaboration, then talk to me a little bit about working with James Griffiths, the director. At what point did you start the process of chatting with him about your work?
Well, as I said, this was quite an exceptional project because I came in quite late to the process because it needed score, but they didn't know to what degree until they started building it. So I came in quite relatively late to the process, which actually was superbly useful because I could actually watch the film pretty much in place and see what it was that was required, rather than say, oh, we got this scene and we got this scene, but we're working on that, and working from a script. I could actually see the whole thing and start building around that. And it was quite clear where we needed music, and it was quite clear where we didn't need music. And it was a joy, really, because it was just slotting the right feeling into the right place.
Listening to the album, going through the album, there's one track that stood out to me as kind of almost encapsulating the overall theme and the overall feeling of the movie, and that's the track I believe is called Whose Name Are You Writing? I'm wondering, so that's my favourite from the score. I know you're not supposed to ask filmmakers and composers, what's their favourite movie, what's their favourite track, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you have a favourite from the score, and why?
I do have a couple of favourite moments, because the score's a bit wonky. It's a bit of a wonky score. I've deliberately tried to connect with the humanness and the heartfelt kind of elements of it, and also to express the melancholy that underlies the whole. There's a strange melancholy underneath this whole thing for a light comedy. It's actually there's a depth of field which you don't often see, and that's due to the performances, due to the writing, due to the relationships on screen. And I wanted to really bring that out. And there are a couple of moments where I was trusted by the director and the writers to sort of just lean into that. And sort of things are out of tune, things are creaky. There are noises in there that you'd normally be asked to remove, which I mic'd up deliberately just to make noisy. And it's kind of like just things being out of tune and just tuning it mid song to try and to so you get this, so it sort of kind of fits. And all this sort of out of anythingness, all kind of, there's a sort of weird focus that comes into place from all the shambolic sort of looseness. There's an emotional quality that you get from that. And my favorite moments in the film are when they come to the fore, and when they're sort of foregrounded. So yeah, my favorite tracks. I'm a bit lost because I can't remember the name of them, which is some of them got the names got changed a bit later on, but there's a few key moments in the film which will be very clear when anyone watches, where there's kind of an openness and a sort of like a depth of field and a sort of weird out of tune twanging and noises, which kind of very brave for a filmmaker to go with, but make a huge difference when you watch the film.
Yeah, I think you're saying the names were changed, but from the way you've described it, that ties in with the track that I've taken the names from Spotify.
One is one of That's definitely that track is one of the three on that record that I think really encapsulate that vibe.
Yeah. Okay, so movies often end up with deleted scenes that don't make the final cut for various reasons. I'm curious, is the same true of songs and of score? And if so, was there any cues or tracks that you liked that didn't make the cut?
Yeah, there's always music that doesn't make it because you're constantly refining and the edit's changing, so you have to reconsider what the actual aim of the scene is, and there's lots of stuff that happens en route to getting there, and sometimes make the most beautiful piece of music in the world for you, but then that scene gets cut, or is suddenly it's followed by a completely different vibe, and you have to compensate for that, and you have to reshape things. I think generally a lot of the stuff I loved got on there. There were quite a few pieces of music that I made that no one else heard. I didn't even present it, which were steps to get there, which I really loved, but there was too much information in them because the performances and the way it's been shot are so beautiful. There's so much information on the screen. There's lots of words, there's a lot of speaking, and you have to leave room for that as a composer. And sometimes that's not. You can put more and more stuff on if you want, and it becomes like a bed, and you don't really hear the music, but it just does an emotional thing. But with the music I'm making, where every element is quite key, and you hear every twang and boing and parp, you want them to be just right. And if you add too many sounds, then it starts to invade what's happening on the screen. And so I loved some of those tracks as standalone bits of music, but I think the album, if you listen to it, the soundtrack album, the score album, works best with your eyes closed, imagining pictures, because there's room for that in there, and that's designed to.
Yeah, no, I like that. The soundtrack, the score works best with your eyes closed. That's a good clip. We'll clip that. So in the movie, Charles our lead character, or one of the lead characters, he wins the lottery and uses a huge portion of that money to bring his favourite band, his favourite duo, to his, more or less private island for a private concert. So, let's imagine you win the lottery. You've got an unlimited budget. Which artist, which band, which artist, alive or dead, are you bringing over for a private concert?
That's a deep question. You know what? I think a lot. I've thought about this since watching the film, and it's made me realise how lucky I've been, sort of being involved in music all my life. So I put my first records out when I was at high school, and I've been releasing records, making scores, all sorts of things, producing albums, and I think what I would do with the money is just make some room for me and my pals to make more music. You know what I mean? It's not even, I wouldn't even sort of like invite the Beatles over. Not, they're not there. But I think making room for me to make music with my pals, which is something I love doing anyway, would be where it really came to it all. Because some musical heroes are people I can phone up and call and say, "Oh, I stubbed my toe today. Isn't that terrible?" And what a privilege that is, eh?
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know, actually, talking of islands and music, and I know you're based in Scotland, it was interesting approaching this because I'm very good friends with a guy called the Pictish Trail, and he runs Lost Map Records, and he's on Isle of Egg, and he runs the whole label from like the wilderness. Wow. On the Isle of Egg, and he's putting out some of the freshest music at the moment around in the singer-songwriters with acoustic world and in the pop world. So it made me think, check out Lost Map. That's a fantastic label, and it's doing some really brilliant stuff. And they run a festival up there. So I remember like getting on the boat across to the island with all my gear. Yeah. It sort of brought all this sort of funny memories back.
Right, not too dissimilar to the movie, at the opening of the movie.
Exactly.
Okay,
I didn't get paid though.
Just two more quick questions.
Go for it.
We're big fans of physical media at the channel. I'm wondering, do you remember what your first ever VHS or your first ever DVD was?
I think my first ever VHS was Transformers animation video. I think it was like the arrival from Cybertron or something like that. So nothing too cool. I'm afraid it's not like the collected works of someone very cool and famous.
I mean, Transformers is very cool.
Yeah, it was definitely mid-80s Saturday morning cartoonsy type thing. I think that would have been the sort of thing I would have got as a very special birthday present or something. Because I was really into those cartoons. So physical media is amazing because of its imperfections. But any media has its imperfections, and I think that's what draws us.
Absolutely,
I do love a bit of VHS.
Excellent. Last question then, Adam, mate. What's next for you? Are you working on any TV shows or any film projects that you can talk about?
I'm working on a few things. Some of it I can't quite talk about yet, but I'm looking forward to the Ballad coming out in the UK at the end of the month. I'm producing a couple of albums with one of my other hats on. I am scoring a couple of things which are exciting. I did a collaboration with a composer called Daniel Pemberton, who's fantastic.
I very nearly had one of his in the background there. Spider-Verse scores.
Oh yeah, that's a sensational score.
Yeah,
we collaborated on a thing which will be coming out soonish, probably. So lots of exciting stuff. I'm sorry to be vague, but there's you know how these things work.
That's all right. To create a bit of intrigue. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Right, Adam. Thanks very much for your time. Congratulations again on the film, and we look forward to seeing and hearing what you do next.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.